Welcome back to the second segment of 6 News on the Record. Our moderate party continues our theme. Christopher Little joining us now. We just had Ken Block on.
Hi, good luck to you.
Little, good seeing you. Thank you for coming to 6 News on the Record. You were running for Attorney General. What prompted you to get involved, A, as Attorney General, and B, with the moderate party?
Well, as you probably know, I've practiced law in Rhode Island for over 30 years and had the opportunity to handle some really complicated cases for a number of people and for businesses in the state and trial court, state and federal courts, and the jury, before judges, before juries, and various places. And I want to give that up, and I want to give that up because I really have had it with an Attorney General's office that is characterized by politics instead of professionalism, and frankly, as we've seen, by self-interest instead of public interest. You know, to me, the role of the Attorney General's office is to really be, first, a tough, independent law enforcement agency, and it is also to be advocates, an advocate for the state of Rhode Island. I know a lot of those lawyers who are in that office, and there's some very fine lawyers who are there. And I think that if they get some direction, some leadership, some support, we can really have an office that will really serve Rhode Island, and that's what I want to do.
What are the shortcomings in the office right now?
The shortcomings? I think the number one shortcoming is it has to do with the priorities. I think that the absence of priority in terms of public corruption, in terms of some of the really sophisticated crime, is really harming in terms of the role, the mission of the office. I think that's one shortcoming. I think there's a shortcoming in not understanding the importance of being advocates for Rhode Islanders when you're going to the Health Insurance Commissioner and you're talking about the rates that insurance companies will get. Yep. And I think they've had a failure to understand the role of advocacy, effective advocacy particularly in that area, and also the need to instill confidence in Rhode Islanders about issues of trust in government.
You know, the Blue Cross asked for a 10.2% increase. You were on my radio show, we were talking about this. And the Attorney General's Department, that's for the 14,000 people who directly pay. And the Attorney General is supposed to be the person who goes in there and argues a case on behalf of the citizens to make sure it's fair and determine what the rate ought to be, or at least help determine. And he stipulated, am I right, to a 9.5% rate? I mean, that's really not fighting really hard. I mean, what would you have done that if you were Attorney General?
Well, you're right. It's like if I sued you, if he sued you for $10,000 and you came to me to represent you, and his lawyer said, well, tell you what, we'll settle for $9,500, you probably wouldn't be happy.
No,
you'd say, what did I hire him for? Well, you know, that's what they did, and that's just unconscionable.
Yeah. And Lynch worked for the Blue Cross beforehand. I mean, did that have to do with it, or do you think you should have recused himself?
Well, you know, I think the fact is they need more support in that area. It's a very important area, and they did not have I don't think they had the resources properly in there. They didn't have the actuaries. They basically didn't do the job that Chris Kohler did when Chris did his calculations.
The Insurance Commission.
The Insurance Commission. And when he said that 6.6% is probably enough for the direct pay. And that really is too much, but that's what he dealt with the record he had.
What do you think of what would the first thing you would do if you became Attorney General? You walked in the office, it's 150 South Main Street, I think it is. You walk in there, and what would be the first thing you do?
Well, I think the first thing I would do is I would go to the individual lawyers and say, we're going to serve the public interest. That's the first thing I would do. Because I really believe that most of the people who work there are there because they believe in supporting the public. And I think they have to understand that they are going to be supported. They are also going to be monitored. That's the first thing I would do. That's the first message. The second message is that
by who, Chris?
They need to be monitored by me. I'm the one who will be responsible for their performance. I'm the one who will be accountable for their performance. They need to understand that there will be certain new initiatives. And one of the initiatives, as I have said, is going to be in this area of more sophisticated resources being allocated toward public corruption, toward issues such as Medicaid fraud, toward issues such as, I know one of yours is with organized crime, which we still have. Yes. I think there are areas that I would look to that I think are very important to build upon, are issues in terms of working more closely with our other governmental agencies, both federal and state, our police departments, dealing with things such as the gang violence in Providence, and also the unfortunate bout of domestic abuse, violent domestic abuse. I will say one of the other priorities I'd like to have is to emphasize even more the prosecution of DUIs.
Well, one of the economic issues in the city of Providence anyway, and that's the capital city, as we all know, is the fact that people don't feel safe in a down city. We saw just this recently, in the recent past, there was a police beating, a brutality. People don't feel that they're safe if police beat up citizens as they did in that particular case, and the crime rate is up. What would you do to help reduce the crime rate in the city of Providence as Attorney General?